Welcome to No Permission Necessary. Today we have Allie Hershman, a licensed therapist and the co-founder of Move to Heal, which is a nonprofit that provides accessible mental health services, fitness, and wellness support to people throughout the country. She serves as the head of the therapy department as she oversees clinical programming and supports the therapists across multiple locations. Please join us today. We had such a great time talking with Allie. She's a wealth of knowledge, and we hope you enjoy today's episode.
This episode of No Permission Necessary is sponsored by Grassroot Recovery. Grassroot Recovery is a sober living and coaching program based in New York City that supports young adult men who want recovery to feel real and livable, not just theoretical. It's owned and run by two brothers, and their work is deeply personal. Grassroot focuses on structure, accountability, and confidence in everyday life. Their approach is hands-on and highly individualized. They don't just create a plan and step back. They stay involved, show up consistently, and genuinely care about the people they work with. Recovery with Grassroot isn't only about staying sober. It's about building a life that you actually want to live. You can learn more about Grassroot Recovery at grassrootrecovery.com.
Allie, we're so grateful to have you on. What a pleasure and honor, honestly. I've heard so many wonderful things.
Well, thank you guys for having me on. This is such an honor to be here. I'm so excited, and I really love what you guys are doing with this podcast. So very excited to be here.
So tell us a little bit about what you're doing with Move to Heal. I know that's the main thing we want to talk about here today, but just kind of your background in general, maybe a little bit about how it started. I know there's a lot of people listening that don't know, and it's also throughout the Northeast now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are expanding. And we actually just opened our first location in Florida as well, which
Ooh.
yeah, it's awesome, which I can get into. But I'm a licensed therapist, and my background is in psychology, and I work a lot with individuals and couples facing anxiety, depression, postpartum, PTSD. And back in grad school, so this is now dating back to like 2014, 2015, I was going to school in Boston, and I was taking these spin classes, and I just loved it. It was like 45 minutes where I could just, me, the bike, the music, it was like so therapeutic. And afterwards, I just would always notice, people would walk out of class and they'd be chit chatting and, making friends and just having this conversation. And I thought to myself, there's such magic in working out and what that does to your brain chemistry. And then the after that, right? And, sometimes people would go for coffee or dinner or walk or whatever after spin class. And I'm like, I just feel like there's something more to this. So I ended up writing my thesis in grad school on exercise and therapy and combining the two. And, then I stepped out into the real world and I had to get, job, make money, get my hours for my license. And this idea kind of just faded into the background. And in 2021, my dad, Ethan Hershman, at the time, I think he was 29 years sober. He's still sober today. So, he's now like 34 years sober. But he said to me, hey, remember that thesis that you wrote in grad school? He, at the time, had a gym down in Greenwich. And he's like, what if we take that idea to this gym? And him, alongside his partner, Colleen Delaney, who was his gym partner down in Greenwich, she ran the classes. He would do kind of like the admin things, and I would do the therapeutic part of this. And we called it Move to Heal. So it was for anyone. It's open to anyone, and obviously still is. But that was looking to come work out and then have a support meeting afterwards where we had a different topic every week. And we started to see the magic come to life within the first couple of classes that we ran. And that's kind of where all of this had started. We've been up and running since 2021. We are now in Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. Like I said, we just opened our first location in Florida, and we have anywhere between 2,500 to 3,000 participants coming to our meetings and workouts every single month now. And in addition to that, we also offer free or subsidized gym memberships. We offer free therapy with a licensed therapist in your state and a free 16 nutritional program that's really focused around intuitive eating and kind of healing relationships with food.
I love this so much. I mean,
This is
when you
wild. I didn't realize how big it was.
Oh,
I didn't
yeah.
know the inception either. I didn't do my research, and I'm kind of glad I didn't because you're hearing my raw reaction here.
Well, there's so many parallels too, because when you were saying that, it reminded me of my thesis, which was around the neurobiology of addiction and around meditation, exercise, and nutrition, and how those things influence people's recovery. So there's like such
Absolutely.
synergy like between all those things. And I'm a big proponent as a therapist when we meet with the clients, and I'm sure you notice this, that most people are missing the physical exercise component. And there's so much research out there about how exercise alone is just as effective as an antidepressant.
Yeah.
Do you want
And
to talk about that a little bit?
well, I'm so glad you brought that up because, now that we've been around since 2021, we could really see not just the magic of Move to Heal, but how it's affecting people's lives. And the amount of people that have now been able to get off a medication because of this program and what they're doing, especially with the physical part of this, it's amazing, and people that, something that I love about Move to Heal is I think a gym can be a little bit intimidating sometimes. And even taking that first step to walk into a gym or especially a gym class where like you might not know, anybody. And there is such an inviting factor about Move to Heal where it doesn't matter if you're an avid gym goer or you haven't been to the gym in a decade or ever. You can get into that class and complete that workout, especially because we have these amazing coaches who just make sure everybody is catered to in a way that they can modify the workout, they can push the workout however they want. And that in itself, the amount of people that are like, I would have never gone to a gym if it wasn't for Move to Heal, that too is so cool to me because, like you said, Jill, there is just so much research behind what moving your body and that physical part can do in terms of our mental health and, brain chemistry and all that good stuff.
I feel there's a couple of things I'm thinking about. One is I made homemade fried wontons last night, and so I feel like I'm not at all on either of your levels. Okay. So
That
there's
sounds amazing.
They were so good, and I did fry them in avocado oil. Okay. So that's a plus for me.
I made chicken cutlets in vegetable oil yesterday. All right. So let's just
You used
level the
vegetable
playing
oil?
field.
Oh my God. It's crazy. But the other thing that I'm thinking about is so I'm a systems person and I'm a family systems person, like in my core. And I look at things through the lens of like a family system healing. And I just love the part about your dad. I mean, I'm just keep thinking about how that, maybe if you could share a little bit about that, like what have been the ups and downs of that journey, like doing it with a family member and, having different probably opinions and different personality types and, just the growth of something that you guys were really passionate about, but naturally, personality stuff comes up, especially with families. So I'm interested to know a little bit more about that.
100%. And I will say this too. My mom is a part of this. One of my sisters is a part of this.
Whoa.
So like, we're really like
Okay, you're
intertwined
in it.
here. Yes.
Yeah.
We really like each other.
Yes. On most days. Yeah. And it's so interesting working with family, I have to say, but I'm so grateful for it. And I think that, to be able to give each other raw, honest, hopefully productive feedback, it has brought us so much closer. But I do think it's important to share. And this is, my dad is extremely open about his sobriety and his journey. Him and my mom have been together since they were 16. And my dad is recovering from alcohol and crack cocaine. When I was 2, my dad was very, very, very deep in his addiction. And my mom basically said, listen, it's either me and Allie or you got to go. And I always get emotional when I talk about this, but, and he's been sober ever since that day. So to go from that, what was that now? I'm 34. So 32 years ago to having it Move to Heal, which is helping other people get sober, stay sober. and have longevity with their family and have a closer relationship with their family. It's so full circle. And when we started Move to Heal, we didn't necessarily do it for those reasons. We did it because we really thought that this could work and that it could help one other person or one other family or save one life. And the fact that it's kind of snowballed and grown into this beautiful thing with family and friends and people and community, it's more than we had ever even could have imagined, to be honest with you, what it's become today. And we have big plans for the future too, but just being able to be present in this moment today and grateful for all that's come from that. It's amazing, truly.
I'm curious about your experience growing up with a parent in recovery because we've done several podcasts. Sarah Benton has the book Parents in Recovery. We talk, Molly and I, and are open about our own recovery. But I don't think we've ever had somebody, who has a parent in recovery, like from childhood as an adult now. Like, how did you know about that as a child growing up in the house? Like, how was that? Can you talk
Yeah.
a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was two, when he got sober, so I don't remember anything before that, but my dad was so open about his recovery. Like, I knew what AA meetings were, NA meetings were. I knew that my dad was sober. I knew why he was sober. And, I don't know when that talk really comes when you talk about alcohol and drugs, but I just remember when that time came in my life, maybe like early teens, he was so open with me about it. And that I truly believe has helped me so much and has shaped so much of the choices that I made later on in my adult life. And I'm really grateful for that. And I talk to a lot of my clients about that too, the openness and how I think that being open and being honest and being really proud in your recovery can really help your kids with those types of conversations and the decisions and choices that they make later on in life.
It's such a personal decision. We talk about that all the time. Molly and I, like, how much do you share? It's like, that's how I am with my kids. My kids can tell you, my daughter can probably explain recovery better than most adults at this point, and she's 10. So,
But I
Yeah.
also think how, like, I grew up in Connecticut too, and my mom and I talk a lot about we're interviewed on the family recovery process. And my dad has also been sober since I was 4 after being dry for 10 years and then picked back up when I was 4 years old. And it was kind of a similar like intervention situation. And, I really think about being kind of loud and proud about your recovery in a very status driven arena. And that's, if you grew up on the shoreline in Connecticut, whether that was Fairfield County, New Haven County, or beyond, I mean, there was a lot of hush hush, keep it in the house, judgment, fear of what other people think. But I will say, what really attracted me, even when I couldn't get sober myself, were the people that were loud about it. Like, I remember, moms who weren't afraid to talk about it and peers that weren't afraid to talk about it. And I just feel like there's such a vulnerability and connection that offers so many people. It becomes this ripple effect. And my mom, this one line stands out when she was interviewed about it. She said, "We weren't the only ones going through it, but I was the only one talking about it." And that's what it felt like for her. I was very young when I started going through my struggles. This was back in 2005. There was not really a whole lot of young people. There was young people recovery, but it wasn't as prominent as it is now, naturally. So I just, there's just so much value in what seems like really paved the way. And your dad making a mark on you. I mean, I have to imagine that probably naturally kind of impacted your decision making of going into help other people and be a therapist. I mean, I don't know if that did, but it seems like the natural kind of progression.
Yeah, absolutely. And I started my career working, doing inpatient, outpatients and substance abuse clinics and methadone clinics. And I really I attribute a lot of maybe I was more like curious about it, or I just felt like I know that people can get sober and they can stay sober. And like, maybe that was just more subconscious. I'm not really sure, but I'm so glad before I opened my private practice, I did have a lot of experience in that field. And to your point too, Molly, I do want to say that, I don't know if you guys see this too, but I'm seeing this so much more, especially with like college aged kids and older too, but like sober curious, and certain places that, like the mocktails and the things like that, and just people not being so, um, not seeing as much drinking, I guess, as maybe in the past. But I don't know. That's kind of, I'm seeing some of that with a lot of my younger clients.
Definitely.
There's
It's
definitely a lot of research around people choosing not to drink, not because they're alcoholics, but because of like fitness goals
Yeah.
or, different reason. Like they don't feel good. They don't want to be hungover. Right. And so there's a lot of research around alcohol sales, right? Going down since COVID. Like
Yes.
people have really embraced more of like, oh, I don't need to have alcohol to have fun.
and there's a mocktail on every menu. I mean, I was out with a girlfriend of mine and her husband. She's a psychiatrist. She doesn't really like to drink. And we talked about that a lot. Like, there's just so much more room for people to make a decision if they don't want to drink. Whereas before, it was like you're either drinking a Coca Cola or a seltzer,
Mm-hmm.
or you were drinking booze,
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, coming from, so like, I never took a legal drink in a bar. I got sober when I was 21. And so, it's really all I've ever known is, don't get me wrong, I drink a lot, but like not legally and not
Mm-hmm.
really politely or kindly, so I just feel like
More of the messy, sloppy variety.
more of just like the bottle of vodka
Yeah, you
smeared
2
off in
took
someone's
different
backseat.
paths from your father's recoveries. You took different paths, it sounds like. We learned different lessons.
Oh my God, the amount of first of all, so gross, and I don't even like the taste of it. I truly drank for effect. We know that to be true. But, I think that there is so much more openness and curiosity around it. And, for people who might be listening, there's a couple things that, a couple themes that I wanted to point out. One is that, yes, curiosity around what sober looks like can be obtainable and doesn't have to be concrete, right? So when I'm working with a client or a family who are really experiencing some curiosity around it, or are there certain behaviors that are perpetuating a lifestyle that no longer serves me, that's a really great entry point. But I'll also say that you really need a team of professionals around you that know how to navigate that. And so that kind of brings me to the next theme that I really want to highlight here, because Allie, it was music to my ears, and I know it was music to Jill's when you said you got your stripes essentially in agency work. And there are so many people that are coming out of college that think they can go into private practice with really no experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so can you maybe share a little bit on how that shaped you, kind of that experience, and what you felt like you really needed to earn first, or learn or grow in whatever capacity, before you stepped into your own thing?
That's a great question, because I think that, you go into grad school and you think, oh, I did. I'm like, oh, private practice. And yes, private practice was my end goal, but I am so grateful that I wasn't able to just get out of grad school and start in private practice. I needed to have that experience. I needed to learn from my clients, learn from my supervisors, learn from my peers. That type of work was so important to me. And I'm not going to lie, like, it's not the easiest work. Like, there were times where I remember feeling like really overwhelmed, or I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing at times. I'm like, I just got all this education, and now you kind of step into like the real work. It's
Yes.
not always the same. It's like, yeah, I have some of, that knowledge, but once that hands-on experience comes, it taught me equally as much, or if not more, than kind of sitting down with in the classrooms and with the books. And I'm really grateful for that experience. I think if you are a therapist or you're heading into private practice, you gotta get that type of experience to really kind of just understand people and different, types of people and backgrounds, and ways in which you can help. And like I said, I really learned so much from the people that I was working with and my
Right.
supervisor, and just having
Mhm.
that type of support was crucial for me during those early stages of my career.
Well, I also think that brings up the point of people not understanding supervision. Clinical supervision is for the modalities that you're working towards, right? But agency supervision is how to cohabitate in a team, in a mid-level management system, how to create the skill sets if you do want to grow from a private practice to a group practice to a move to heal, right?
Right.
Having the ability to understand how business is structured. And I think for a lot of individuals, they don't get that experience and then they feel lost in business. Because if you are running a private practice, you essentially are running your own business. And so if you don't have the tools and the skills from that agency level, whether that's, we've talked a lot about this on our podcast, which is maybe you've never seen a performance improvement plan. Maybe you've never written somebody up. Maybe you've never had a hard conversation with a colleague, right? And I'm not saying that those things have to happen in order for you to be successful, but there is a level of kind of grit and a level of what's a crisis versus what's not a crisis.
Absolutely.
And so, I also worked inpatient, worked outpatient, worked extended care, kind of all the levels, ran some sober living houses really back in the day, which was totally chaotic and crazy. But, part of what that really taught me is that when a family or a client reaches out, I can really quickly tease out and diffuse and be a strong kind of pillar for them to say whether this is a crisis or not a crisis. And that's impactful. So maybe, sharing with us a little bit in terms of Move to Heal, knowing that you probably do hear, see, and are exposed to individuals that are going through some level of more acute challenge,
Sure.
but that you become an entry point for individuals. How does Move to Heal navigate that? How do you work with getting people the proper support? Because
Yeah.
sometimes obviously outpatient therapy or, a Move to Heal class isn't enough
Yes.
for somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. So our support meetings are not run by therapists. They are just support meetings, and we make that really clear. They are a place where you can come and you can talk, whether it's on the topic of the day or just something that's kind of on your heart or on your mind. And then if you're feeling like, you know what, I kind of want more, individual care or time with a therapist, you'd reach out to me. I run our therapy department. We have 13 different therapists throughout the
Wow.
different states, and
Okay.
we get you connected within 24 hours. That is so important to me because I think that, and I'm sure you guys, know this and have experienced this, it can sometimes be a very drawn out, long process.
Right.
And I think, let's say, someone who is facing depression and struggling with depression, it can be hard enough just to get out of bed and, brush your teeth and get showered, let alone go online, research therapists, email, insurance, this and that. I
Right.
want this to be as seamless and accessible as possible. And then if, the client is deemed that they need a higher level of care, we have like Cam, for example, great connection that I can call him and say, hey, this is what this client's facing. And he's like, no problem. And he could usually find a bed for someone within 24 hours or, an IOP or something like that. So the relationships too that Move to
Yeah.
Heal has with people like Cam, for example, really, really important. And he's so wonderful and such an asset to our team.
Yeah, I feel like that's such, really when you have gone through going back to agency work or connections, schooling, kind of developing your network. I was actually listening to somebody the other day talk about how your network really expands, not until your 40s, right? After you've really created those relationships in your mom groups, in your social circles, through your husband's job or your wife's job, through family, right? Like it just keeps expanding and expanding and expanding. And so the ability for you to continue to reach a wider net is really a byproduct of the network that you have created, essentially. People refer to people. As much as people maybe don't love that or don't agree with it because they want to feel like both people and ethics align, especially in our space, the reality is that people refer to people. And so how those relationships have been cultivated for you sounds like it's been a really organic process.
Absolutely. And speaking of just, the agency work that I was doing before my private practice, I still talk to a lot of my colleagues and refer people. And I have a couple that actually are Move to Heal therapists because, one was in Massachusetts, Connecticut. Like it really is, those relationships that you build. And it's also, there is really that the intensity of those jobs sometimes can also really bond you with the people that you are working with because it's not always really relatable to a lot of people what you're kind of experiencing day in and day out, but your coworkers alongside of you, they, become such support. And, I've really, again, like that type of work, I really value those relationships. And I love that you mentioned that.
I mean, speaking of referrals, I can say that we've referred clients to Move to Heal. And I can tell you my clients' personal experiences has been we talked a lot about sobriety, and one of the hesitant things that clients were hesitant about going is like, well, I'm not sober. I drink. So can I go to these meetings? And
Mhm.
recovery is such a broad term, and Move to Heal really encompasses that, where I've had people that have gone to those meetings, and a woman was struggling with the aftermath of a miscarriage, and then somebody else is struggling with depression, and the only reason they've got out of bed this week is to come to this meeting, and then somebody else is struggling because they're 2 days sober, and like the beauty in everyone struggling with different things, but being able to put it out on the table and feel like, okay, I can be supported in this. And then we're
Yes.
going to go move our body so we can kind of process this emotions.
Yeah.
I talk all the time about like stuck energy. And that's one of the things that I describe to clients is like, if you're not moving your body, that energy, that those emotions are just stuck energy. And we're
Yep.
not processing through to like a solution on the other end. Because a lot of times, as a therapist, we can facilitate some of this work with the clients, but at the end of the day, they have to move their energy. We can facilitate that movement, but we have to, and I think the combination of talking about something and that really scary part of putting it out there, and then I'm going to go do this thing that I've never done before, that I have to
Mhm.
now change the way my brain is thinking to what my problems are, to, oh shit, if I don't pay attention, like I'm either going to fall or lose my balance or really hurt myself, or I need to like shift my perception and my attention towards this thing.
Right.
And also it's hard. I'm running, I'm like losing my breath and breathing really hard. And
Mhm.
we have to do hard things to get through hard things. And I think like
Yes.
the clients that I've had that have gone there, I know some of them that still go that are no longer clients of mine. We've referred friends there. Like I said, my husband goes to a Move to Heal gym. So like, he's always also referring people there. But they've had really profound healing
Yeah.
from going to that. And
Yeah.
it's opened up their perspective around exercise and how useful it is. Like
Mhm.
it's you talk about the magic, but it really is. It's like we talk about move a muscle, change a thought, but that's putting it into action.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I really can't thank you enough for referring people because that's like the biggest way is just, and so many people don't know about it. And then they're like, wait, like, this is amazing, you have these things that are offered. And one of the things, Jill, that I really like that you mentioned is just people with so many different backgrounds. And I remember this was probably we're 6 months into this. I was down at the gym in Greenwich, and there was a mother who was there because her son was struggling with addiction, and it was really intense. And then there was a young gentleman there who was in recovery, and I remember the mom sharing and just the guilt she felt and the shame she felt, and she's like, I just wish I could do more and all of that. And I remember this young gentleman coming up to her at the end of the meeting and just giving her a hug. My gosh, I get so emotional with these things. Giving her a hug and saying, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And that's why I love these meetings, because the different perspective of all of the people that go, I think, is another part that makes the meetings really work and the movement really work.
I mean, as therapists, we know the power of the group, but it's also the hardest thing to get clients to agree to do.
Mm-hmm.
As someone
Totally.
who, has an IOP program, and I've run groups at Inspire before for clients, and once they get into it, they understand the power of
Yeah.
being around other people and peers and people going, being in the same boat as people, right? But man, getting people to get there, it's like it's so intimidating, it's so hard, and that's where like, if you're a therapist, those motivational interviewing, the like really resolving some of that like ambiguity around like how, where the ambivalence around going to the group and what's so scary about that, because once you cross over that threshold, it really can be a powerful experience. And most people we talk about all the time are fighting with this loneliness epidemic.
Yeah.
People are
Yeah.
lonely, but then they're also scared to go be around and in community with people.
Right.
Well, it's
And
to be
that's
seen. That's also to be seen in a much different light. So you're asking someone not only to go step into a group, but also exercise in front of people. So
Mhm.
when, in extended care, I used to work with both the men and women's program. And the women, they really struggled. They really struggled to exercise in front of people, didn't want to look themselves in the mirror. I mean, those things are really real for a lot of people that have been feeling pretty down and out. I think the nice part about what you offer is that it's not just for people who are struggling with addiction or in recovery, because it will balance out what people are struggling with. So it won't just be so top heavy. Like if you have 30 women in a young adult extended care program, they're all kind of battling similar things, right? Like, yeah, there's maybe a little bit of difference, but for the most part, they have body image issues. They're struggling to be seen. They're struggling to be able to tell the truth. They're struggling to connect with their family. They're comparing out where their other friends are. All their other friends are in college, like all the comparisons, right? And to walk into a place where maybe there's a little bit more stability, whether that's from an age perspective, just with time, and time takes time, right? But also just people struggling with maybe this person's feeling a little bit lonely and depressed, but this person is really struggling with enabling and codependency behaviors, right? So I don't know. I feel like that's probably very magical. I really want to go to a class. I'm definitely going. I mean,
Yeah.
I would
No,
love to see
and
it
I think
live.
that we won't just partner with any gym either, right? We have Colleen Delaney, who does a really good job at making sure the people that own the gym that's going to be running the program, that they can facilitate being able to welcome in someone that may have a lot of the fears around going to their first fitness class or sharing at their first meeting. Creating that welcoming environment really starts with the gym and the coaches and all of that. And that's the first thing that we look at when we're going to partner with a new gym, of how can we create this space that is welcoming and inviting to everyone, no matter what you're facing, no matter what your age is, no matter what your fitness level is, or your experience in group settings like this. So that's really, really important to us.
Have you had to deny gyms?
So sometimes it won't, like, it depends, right? Like it has to be a good fit, because that, like, we're not there at every meeting, right? But we do try to replicate as much as we can. And so I don't really handle that as much, like that side of it. Like I said, Colleen has a really good intuitive knack for that. But I will tell you, the gyms that we have partnered with have been wonderful. Amazing.
Good.
I mean, they are the bread and butter of this. They're changing lives. They're so dedicated. It's amazing.
I can speak to the gym that I know of that has a Move to Heal program. And I started going there after coming back from one of my various injuries. And so I had to scale everything. And, it's like, it was nice coming in there and seeing there was a baby at one of the first classes I went to. And it wasn't a Move to Heal, but it's, again, speaking to how the gym environment is. There was a baby there in a car seat, right? Because the mom was exercising in the class. There were several postpartum women. And then there were like older women that clearly they weren't able to do the class as it was prescribed, right? But they had other things that they could do. I'm pretty sure I peed my pants jump roping at some point during that class, which, that happens when you're a postpartum mom. Shout out to the pelvic floor PT appointment that I set up recently. But that's why people, especially, we could talk about postpartum and getting back into the fitness routine, but your body is no longer yours. You're in this alien body you've never had before. You're peeing your pants, jump roping. Let's be real. It's happening on a large scale, which, by the way, ladies, if you're peeing your pants while you're at all, I've been told that's not normal.
It's not normal, right?
Yeah.
Let's just normalize that for a second.
Okay, let's normalize pelvic floor PT, because
Yes.
in other countries in the world, they that's automatic after you have a baby. So
yeah, and it's not talked about enough. I did pelvic floor PT for
I didn't
6
know about
months.
it.
Yeah, and it's a game changer, because you're right.
Game
It isn't
changer.
normal to be peeing, but everyone's like, oh, that's normal. No, it's not. But pelvic
No,
floor,
you're not supposed to.
yeah. Pelvic floor
So,
therapy is amazing.
Yeah. So shout out to those practitioners. But back to the gym environment, that's what really got me restarted on this fitness. I pretty much took it to an extreme because I'm an alcoholic. So that's where we're at now. But that's where I started it again.
Postpartum.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't. I was not technically postpartum anymore. I was post injury, one of my many. So
what's postpartum? 2 years?
I
2
think
years,
they say
first
2 years.
2 years. Yeah. And I actually just recently got.
Yeah, you two are postpartum.
Yeah.
Yeah. I recently got my PMHC last year, because. And can we talk about postpartum for a minute?
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that it's, as a therapist, and I thought I was so prepared. Postpartum really hit really hard for me. And I think that Again, these things are talked about more, but I still think that they're not talked about enough, and just feeling like all the different emotions from the baby blues to, dealing with anxiety and depression. And for me, 6 months was actually when my anxiety and depression got like the worst, which I was like, oh, I thought it would be maybe like, I don't know, the first couple weeks or whatnot, but 6 months, and kind of just feeling that so many changes in your body and your mind, and you're recovering from birth, like physically and mentally, and then trying to take care of a newborn at the same time. It really has, it's a whirlwind, at least it was for me. And just the space, especially with, being able to have therapy or a move to heal, something like that, I think is so important. And we do see a lot of women coming in postpartum, and even if they're just kind of moving their body a little bit or just stretching during kind of the workout, and then being able to sit in the meeting is really nice. But I know for me, postpartum, like attending some of the move to heal meetings was really helpful.
Yeah, and just
I mean,
connection. I mean, I
yeah.
think that that's like, I think as people who are in recovery, we have this built-in recovery system, which is so helpful, especially if you're active in 12-step support. But I really, I think after I had my son, I cried about the women. I tell this story frequently. I really was fucked up about the women that were birthing babies alone, raising them alone. I recently went down to bring some support into a facility down in Baltimore City that take in women and children. And I was watching these women who are fighting for their mental health and their recovery while holding a 1 week old baby. Okay. And so, like, for those women, finding resources and being able to plug those people into support that are really doing the damn thing, right? Like, they're trying, they're doing their very, very best. But I really, I feel grateful that I had such robust support and access to a smartphone to go on the Peloton app and do like a
Mhm.
postpartum workout, or, that I have access and space in my house, that I had childcare and support. But that's not the majority in a lot of ways, right? So how do individuals get plugged in to the right postpartum support and what's right for them, right? Everybody is different. So I'm just glad that you offer that and it's an inclusive environment. I mean, you go back to kind of when women or men, right, who are, single parents or needing to get support for their own recovery, and then at times being shamed to that they're bringing a child into that space, and how much of a gap that ends up creating for
Mhm.
individuals that need support while trying to be a parent. I mean, it is a real thing. And I have brought my kids to places when I've needed support, whether that's an appointment, whether that's a support group or otherwise. And sometimes I'll get a side eye, right? Like sometimes I'll get, you know, someone who's ornery and just, doesn't feel like I should, they should be making noise or whatever. Everyone's been there in a nice restaurant, whatever it is. And you just have to stand tall in your truth of what you need, right? What you need to be able to be a parent, and to be a parent in recovery, or to be a parent who's supporting someone who's in recovery. Like, what are those things that you need to feed yourself and not really take the judgment from the other folks?
Yeah, I think sometimes, like, as moms, we could feel shame that we might need help, because, oh,
Mhm.
like, isn't this supposed to be a natural thing that women do and all of that? And it's like the mental piece of this, though, is like so important. And then also for moms that are like afraid to say anything, because, like, well, is my baby going to be taken away if I admit, oh, I'm having anxiety or I'm depressed or I'm having these intrusive thoughts, and just like the education around that. And also educating partners, how can they help, what can they look for, if something seems a little bit off. All of these things, again, I think are so important, just like pelvic floor therapy, which I think should be recommended to everybody after they give birth. I also think there
Yes.
should be a little bit more mentally, options for people and things like that. It's sometimes a
Oh,
little
our
bit harder.
our care model for I'll go so far as to say women in general, but from the prepartum pregnancy experience all the way through postpartum is lacking. in
Yeah.
a variety of ways.
Yeah.
And I think we've become so used to this, like, and this goes for therapy, but our entire medical system, but especially with this particular issue, it's like we've become used to this, like, I don't know, it's like this factory mentality. Like we're just popping out, like, this is how it's done, and one size fits all. Like, this is just how it is, without kind of explaining pregnancy and having a baby is one of the most natural things that we do as women. And I think because we are so intuitive as women, we often will know something's off with our body, our baby, something right before. And we bring that to these medical professionals who are in a position of power. And we're kind of gaslit sometimes.
Mhm.
No, everything looks great. The labs
Mhm.
look great. This looks great. Everything's good. And it's like, no, no, no. I mean, that's what happened to me postpartum.
Mhm.
I know, Molly kind of watched me go through that. I went through it with my weight, I'm not losing weight after my second. What's going on? Something's not right. Something's not right. And the traditional medical model, everything looks fine. Your labs look fine. This isn't normal though. This isn't
Mm.
normal to carry all this extra weight after doing all the things, right? And then I eventually got diagnosed with the autoimmune disorder. But I think that even that and having the support around what your options are, how to advocate for yourself, speaking up for yourself, that it's not to follow your intuition. Because I think a lot of times a lot of women get scared. Like, no, they're the doctor, so they must know best. So like, I'm just going
Right.
to stifle my intuition and what I think is going on with my body. And it's like, I think that leads to not being able to trust yourself. And that's one of the most powerful things we have as women. And again, the most natural thing as being a mother and having a baby is following that intuition that we have.
Absolutely. For yourself and for your baby too. Like I remember
Yeah.
certain things being like, this is off. And I'm always like, oh no, that's fine. I'm like, and really kind of having to push and advocate for yourself, which I think is so important. And I saw this statistic and I hope I don't get this wrong. I'll fact check this, but I believe, including birth, women get about 40 hours of care during pregnancy and birth and when you're in the hospital, and 30 minutes of care postpartum.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Based on my experience.
Yeah. Mind blown,
Yeah.
right? You go in for like your
You
6 week.
go for a little checkup.
Yeah, 6 week
Oh,
checkup.
do the PHQ-9 and the
Yes.
GAD,
Yep.
and you're good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow,
A
you're not
couple
depressed.
What
Right.
has that looked like for you, mom, therapist, entrepreneur? You had a baby. What's changed? Obviously, everything's changed, but is there anything that you feel like for the listeners who may be juggling kind of both entrepreneurship, motherhood, being a spouse, a daughter, a friend, kind of what has changed for you? What has been helpful for you?
That's a great question. I think, prior to having my son, I said yes to pretty much everything. Like, oh, client needs to be seen at 9 p.m. Yeah, no problem. Do this. Yeah, no problem. And I think I've really gotten good at implementing boundaries for my own mental health, for the sake of taking care of myself, my baby, my husband, having our family unit. And I think especially like in private practice, at least for me, right? Like when I was starting private practice, you kind of just got to say yes and do it. And you're grinding and you're trying to get yourself out there. And a lot of that has shifted for me. And I always say, like, it's not to say that I won't get back to certain parts of my business that I felt were, really just like on the up and up. But I also am willing to kind of take some space to be a mom that's also a therapist. And that was like a big reason why I wanted to go into private practice too, was to kind of have some flexibility to be able. Now granted, I didn't realize like Move to Heal and all of my podcasts and things like that have filled my schedule too, but to have kind of some of that flexibility where I can spend an hour or two with my son in the morning before seeing my first client on a Monday or something like that. But I've always just had this like hustle mentality, and while that served me well in some chapters of my life, it wasn't serving me well in this chapter of motherhood that I'm in right now. And like I said, it's not to say that can't change, but for right now, I am just trying to set some more boundaries for myself and kind of listen to myself, like what feels good and what doesn't feel so good. And that's really completely new for me. And I don't know, maybe I'm a little embarrassed to admit that I should have maybe had that unlocked beforehand, but it's been a really big learning experience. And then perspective overall, just perspective in the way that I am as a therapist now, especially for moms and people that are struggling with trying to get pregnant or going through the IVF journey or postpartum care, child loss. I mean, all these different things, perspective around it. I think it's made me a little bit more human and less like therapy mind sometimes. And it's actually served me well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also the experience that we talk about, right? Like your network expands, your experience expands, so many things change. I can totally relate to the grind, and the hustle. And I know Jill can too. I think that there is some people will say to me, like, how do you do it all? Right. But I think there is a lot of flexibility now that I once didn't have. Like when I had my first son, or my first child, I didn't have that flexibility. And Jill didn't either. We talk about this a lot on this platform. Just there was such rigidity in my schedule. I had to leave at the same time. I didn't get home till I was always on call. It was 7 days a week, 24 hours out of the day, 365. I mean, it just, there wasn't a pause, there wasn't like, oh, I can't take this call right now. Like that wasn't really an option, because it began and ended with us in a lot of ways. And now I feel like, although I've taken on a lot more projects, starting my own business, starting a podcast, doing some consulting, all these fun things, there is a lot more flexibility in the day where I can, for an hour, step out and go for a walk with my daughter or go pick my son up from school, So I think it's important to also not beat ourselves up and say, like, what way our life should be at this juncture, right? Should it look different? Should it be that I'm regimenting more schedule because I feel so scattered sometimes, or that I'm, could create more holes for my kids because they're not getting enough? Like, I think it was important when you said, like, just to be present in the, like, where I am today. Like, that's about all I have control over.
Yeah.
In this moment.
Well, women get judged more than men do for being ambitious while also raising a child. I was looking at criticisms of celebrities recently, females who continued their career while also, and there's questions around like, well, who's raising the baby and this, that, and the other. And it's like, guys, why is this just on the, like, it's okay for a man to have a baby and then continue doing whatever he's doing, but it's not okay for the woman? Like, it's okay to do both. It's also okay if you want to completely quit the corporate world or whatever you were doing and be a stay-at-home mother, if that's what you're drawn to do. I think we all have different ambitions, and sometimes finding that balance, or what we talk about all the time, balance is bullshit, but like finding what that looks like, I think our identities shift. And I always look at it as like the mother identity added to who I was. It didn't mean that I had to take away the other parts of me to step into that mother role.
Absolutely. And I think identity too, postpartum, at least the first year, I will say, kind of once I hit that year mark, I felt a lot better, maybe more myself. I'm not really sure. But even just like trying to figure out, like, who am I right now with all the things that I still like loved prior to becoming a mom and all of that. And also just like the pressure of that is put on women. This is kind of a silly example, but when my husband and I go out to eat, I always have to change the baby's diaper because there's not even a changing table in the men's room. Like, what's up with that?
Or a changing table at all. Okay.
I know. I'm like,
I went ballistic on a place in, this is one of my rants. Sometimes I end up going full tilt, but I was at a restaurant out at the beach. Where were we? Oh, we were in LBI. And I went in there when Bodhi was a baby and there was no changing table. And it just infuriated me because it was like, it's a family town. It's a family, family restaurants, come one, come all, these huge tables with these big families, and there's no changing table. So I made a complaint and then I left alone. Well, I come back the next year and now Madden's here and she needs to be changed. I went full send on the management team, fully went unhinged because I was like, this is inappropriate. And just so you know, I will be changing my daughter at the table in the stroller next to another customer. Like, that's where we are. I mean, if there's no place to change them, there's no place to change them. But talk about going when I didn't even realize that when Bodhi, and you don't think about it until you have a baby and you need to change a diaper. You literally don't think about it. But I remember bringing my son to New York for my sister-in-law's wedding. He was only 3 months old and we went to a couple restaurants out in New York.
But there's no bathrooms for adults, let alone a changing table in New York City.
No changing tables, but it's crazy.
Yeah.
It is so crazy.
And again, I never even looked for a changing table prior to
Of course not.
having, right? So it is just that shift.
What are some things now that you do for your own self-care? You're a therapist, you're a business owner, you're a mom. What are some things that people might not know about you? Some things that you do to kind of take care of yourself?
Yeah. So fitness for me has always just been like my space where and group fitness. I really enjoy like the group classes where I could put my phone down for 45 minutes. I love like the F45 style classes and just have that. I will say it's just a little bit more challenging now with work and, childcare and things like that, getting to those certain classes. But when I do, I really enjoy it and I try to make it a priority to get there like, three times a week minimum. That's really big. Going to therapy myself, both individual and couples therapy. My husband and I, a couple of years ago, we went through, or we had gotten into a really bad accident. This is like right after we had gotten engaged, and he actually had to get a few of his fingers amputated. And the physical and the mental recovery from that had started to shape our relationship in a way that wasn't really beneficial for either of us. And we both really committed to going to couples therapy and, his own therapy, my own therapy. And I've done therapy since I was like 15, but my own therapy as well. And just a shift in marriage in our relationship at the time, and just kind of coming out of that on the other end of that, and then getting married and finding out we were pregnant, and kind of just the shift that our life has taken. But we really still make it such a priority for ourselves to have that therapy for both couples and individual. And I preach that all day long. Like I'm a really big advocate for that. And then aside from, of course, like trying to really be present and put my phone away, that's like a really big thing. At night, when we put our son to bed, my husband and I really make it a priority to have dinner together and to watch a show where we either get through the whole thing or we both fall asleep because we're exhausted from the day. But we really try to make it a point to kind of have that little date time and keep the relationship a priority, because that can definitely get lost with the chaos of just trying to balance everything, which I like. That balance is bullshit because it really is. But kind of doing some of those things, family, friends, but being present is like kind of my word this year. Like I'm really trying to be intentional with that.
I was also watching this video of a mom who, I don't know if you guys have this experience, but regularly I am running late. Okay. It's not my children. So, but I'll be like, come on, we gotta go. We're gonna be late. Come on, we gotta go. We're gonna be late. And to really kind of say like, is it a crisis? If we need to get there a little bit earlier, then I need to change my schedule because my children are just following suit to whatever I'm doing. So if I know it's going to be an extra 15 minutes to get my son out of the house because he's, doing lasers in the corner or whatever he's doing, like then I just need to make more time and room for that. Right.
Mhm.
So that's also been something that I feel like I've really been trying to bring into this year is, being present, but also not rushing. But
Yeah.
somehow I fall short every week. But, today's a new day.
Imaginary, like there's like an imaginary clock running or like time period that you have
Yeah.
a schedule that you don't share with everybody else is what happens. And I know this because last night at 8 o'clock, when in my mind the kids are going to be in bed by 7:30 because we just came back from vacation. And my husband goes, Mommy had a plan in her head she didn't share with everybody else. Said it out loud to everybody. And that's exactly what happened
Oh my God.
because I had a plan. I didn't share that plan with everybody though.
Yeah, I'm so
So
guilty.
then I start getting frantic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's me. That's
Yeah.
me.
Then I get frantic. Why aren't you in bed? Well, he's not in bed because no one's putting the kid to bed. I mean, what's happening here?
Oh my gosh.
It's really
Relatable.
children really just do it to you, they just do.
So we do this thing at the end of every episode where we give a permission slip to our listeners. So it's something that is like a takeaway for them to take into their week. So what would your permission slip be for our listeners?
Oh my gosh, what a great question. It's never too late. That's kind of what I've been thinking about lately. And that's, whether that's trying something new, whether that's changing up, routine, Just, this is like such a small example, but sometimes I could be guilty of like, scrolling on my phone at night. Well, it's never too late to swap that out to just reading a book, and I started doing that 2 weeks ago, and I'm reading this great motivational book. And, I just think that it's never too late. I think sometimes we can look at age or time or this or that, and we feel like it's already past us, but that's not the case. We can always switch direction at any time. We can always add something. We could take something out, and it's never too late.
I love that. If people want to find you, how can they find you? How can they find Move to Heal? How can they find you as a therapist? All the deets.
Yes. So Move to Heal, www.movetohealct.org. You can find out a ton of information about the program itself, the locations where it's offered, and movetoheal.ct on Instagram. And then my therapy page, which is Alexandria, Alexandria, Hershman, Hershman. That's Instagram. And that's also my website as well. And that's kind of the main spots that you can find us.
And your podcast, because you shared with me at the beginning of this episode that you do a podcast for little kids, which is so amazing. And I just subscribed. So can you share a little bit about that?
Thank you.
Too?
Yes. Allie and Friends. It really is, again, kind of going back to motherhood. I felt like I was kind of lacking that creative outlet, and I decided to do a kids podcast. So screen-free, 10-minute episodes, story time, spelling, we sing, we dance, we do the whole thing. It's so good for car rides. It's great for throwing it on when, changing a diaper, playing in the room, whatever it is. And that's Allie and Friends, and you can find that anywhere that you listen to podcasts.
Guys, there's a lot of nuggets in this episode. Allie, we're so grateful. Thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to check out one of your classes at Move to Heal. And if anybody is interested in finding out more information, we'll have all of Allie's information in the show notes and some collab posts. And if you haven't already, please give us a like, follow, subscribe on YouTube, all of our platforms, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you find your podcasts. Until next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much.